Hello everyone, welcome to another video. In this video I want to tell you everything you need to know about Azure Linux and how to get started. Currently I'm preparing for a conference talk where I talk about AKS security and I came about Azure Linux, and I thought it might be interesting for you, so I want to present it to you in this quick video. So first up, Azure Linux is, as the name suggests, built from Microsoft. Microsoft builds and uses Linux for many years now, but it still sounds kind of weird to me. But Azure Linux is a custom build. This means it's not derived from any other distribution. It's completely new, built from scratch. It's RPM based. This means it uses the RPM packages. And what's probably more interesting is that all the first-party Azure services, such as the Microsoft Defender or Xbox Live Service, use Azure Linux already. Azure Linux is also available on GitHub. So if you follow the link or you go to github.com/Microsoft/Azure Linux, you'll find everything about Azure Linux there. And in theory, you could also download the ISO and just run it as a VM and play around with it. But the idea of Azure Linux is to use it with Azure services, and it's fully purposely built for this. Now let's talk about Azure Linux a bit. As I said before, it's built by Microsoft and Microsoft manages everything. It depends how you see it, but for me that's a good thing, because if there are any problems, Microsoft can take care of everything and they're not dependent on a third party. This means, for example, if there's a security problem, for example, if one of the Azure teams finds a security problem, they can just go to the Azure Linux team and make them fix it. The same with performance. If one of the Azure teams has a problem with performance, they have the team in the same company and they hopefully can figure out a solution quite quickly. Then with quality, that's again debatable, but since everything comes from one company out of one hand, I would hope that the quality is better than if you use like many different components from different companies, different teams. So I give Microsoft the benefit of the doubt. Let's hope the quality is great. And lastly, the support. If everything comes from one company, they should also be able to help with any problem that arises. And since Azure Linux is purposely built for Azure, this means that it reduces the packages it needs. Especially it only needs or only uses all the packages it needs to run the Azure services. And this has several advantages. The first one is, since there are less packages used, there's also a smaller attack surface, since every package, every dependency is a potential target for an attack. And a smaller attack surface has the advantage that there are also less CVs, and therefore you need less patches. And this should hopefully lead to a more stable and better Linux version overall. Another advantage is, since you use less packages, you use less overhead, therefore the whole image is smaller and it should hopefully also be more performant. And as I said before, I'm preparing for a talk about AKS security right now, and that's how I came across Azure Linux. And AKS gets a special treatment from the Azure Linux team. This means every time there's an update with Azure Linux, they do performance tests for AKS. If there is a regression performance-wise, then the update is not released. This means with every update of Azure Linux, we should get at least the same performance and hopefully a better performance for our AKS cluster. A better performance leads to a faster, more performant cluster overall. And one of the advantages is that the cluster is created faster. So if you create a new cluster with Azure Linux, it should be created faster than if you use Ubuntu, and especially if you use Windows. And today, if you create an AKS cluster, the control plane is already Azure Linux, and you also can't configure this. That's just the default. And the current version, Azure Linux 3, is supported on Kubernetes with the version 1.31 and above. So if you have an older version of AKS, you have to use Azure Linux 2, and the new one support Azure Linux 3. And if you create a new AKS cluster, then you can create a node pool, and there you can create or select what operating system you want. And as you can see here, you can just select Azure Linux the same way as you would use Ubuntu or any of the Windowses. And that's already everything I wanted to tell you. So in my opinion, if you use AKS, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't use Azure Linux. It's purposely built. It comes from Microsoft. It has less packages, therefore less security vulnerabilities. The performance should be better, and overall it should enable you to have a more performant cluster. So thanks for watching, and I see you next week.